Quite some time ago, I made a video titled Golden Aspect of Gaming, Sense of Progression, where I discussed how gaming is a unique medium of entertainment focusing on, as the title would suggest, a sense of progression that it can instill within the player, all the while highlighting the game of Celeste, which I felt embodied that aspect of gaming. That video was always intended to be part of a series, so here we are. Only today I'm going to discuss an aspect that is sort of exemplary when trying to describe what makes gaming different from television or comics. And as the title of this video would suggest, it is choice. Now, choice is a little more complicated than it first seems. Having the ability to alter the path of the narrative is a very powerful tool for immersion, and adds a tangible weight of accountability to the story, because that guy did not get eaten by a zombie because the protagonist man made a mistake, that guy got eaten because I made a mistake. This almost visceral feeling of responsibility is so appealing that other forms of media have tried to invoke it in their audiences by including narrative decision points, such as in the Choose Your Own Adventure series or Netflix's interactive shows. The strength of these narrative decisions have a range, but most of them prove ineffective as they're limited by constraints of the medium that they're a part of, or as in the case with most of them, being allocated to entertainment for younger audiences, which means the focus of the project is more to provide a frivolous romp that uses choice as a sort of gimmick, rather than something to enrich the experience. Exceptional pieces of this choose your own adventure genre, shout out to Bandersnatch, do rise above these constraints and provide an interesting showing of how choice can deepen a story, so thoroughly in fact that I would argue that Bandersnatch blurs the line between the genres of interactive movies and video games, especially when looking at the larger scope of video games as a whole, including visual novels and games akin to the work of Telltale. Narrative decision points, however, are only one way that video games enable their audiences when it comes to the realm of choice. Merely playing a game is a set of choices in itself, and not in the sense that I choose to boot up the game in the same way I choose to watch a movie, but in the sense that I can choose to just do this. Or this.
Hasta luego!
Or this. Video games require input from the player to function, and gives players control of how and when to progress through the game. It is this interactivity that helps define and make choices so unique in video games, and many people have described this idea as player agency. Agency, most simply described, is the ability to make decisions that alter the game. Now, once again, an obvious example is of course narrative choices that alter the story, but there's so much more to it than that. Let's say you're playing a classic fantasy RPG reminiscent of Dragon Age. A very classic setup to combat is offering a sort of class system based upon the three fantasy archetypes being mage, warrior, and rogue. Choosing any one of these may not affect the story depending on which game you're playing, but almost all your actions in combat are shaped around this choice. Warriors are big stabby boys that can take a hit, whereas mages are damage machines that use their mystical tools to their advantage. I don't expect these two classes to play similarly, and usually they don't. And they do offer different combat experiences, which is due to the choices that I made in becoming a part of that class. I can choose to use different equipment which alters my damage and abilities. I can choose which party members to bring on missions with me to gain access to their toolset and perspective. Sometimes they're even real people that show me how to improve my techniques. I can choose how to prioritize factories, supply chains to build Dyson spheres. I can choose to just take in the view. Sometimes you as a player are not even aware you're making a choice. You're just playing the game and suddenly the game will comment on how you've done things. In Disco Elysium, if you run around everywhere, your partner will ask you why you're always in such a rush. Or in Hades, the game will have a voice line for practically any way that you die. These kinds of decisions are possible when the game asks you to use the mechanics of playing the game itself to make the choice rather than offering a dialogue option or a button prompt. You can be placed into a position where it seems obvious to do a certain task, but the developer can ask the question, what if they just don't do the obvious, and then offer an alternate path? An example in Hollow Knight is found with Zote. You find poor Zote in the jaws of a predator insect, and with his sad expression, it only seems obvious you should put an end to this and save the defenseless bug. But you can just walk away. And if you come back late enough, he's not there perpetually waiting for your rescue. He just dies. This locks out content of him appearing later on in the game at multiple instances, including a whole boss fight. It's crazy to think that developers are able to offer these kinds of experiences when there's a good chance that so much of it will just be wasted from player to player, as they may not follow the path that leads them to this choice at all, so they cannot even appreciate that there was a choice in the first place. So, how can I possibly pick a game that encapsulates all of these elements? How can I choose a game that's supposed to be an exemplar of choice? Breath of the Wild is an excellent pick with its unparalleled open design, from its wide weapon selection to the ability to just walk straight to the final confrontation from the get-go. Just search Breath of the Wild clips and see what players have been able to accomplish with the tools available in that game. It's wholly amazing. Mass Effect is another strong contender for its implementation of save data transferring to sequels, where choices made in Mass Effect 1 would alter the narrative of 2 and 3, making Commander Shepard's adventures through the Milky Way some of the most memorable in all of entertainment. Even with such strong examples, I'm not sure if any game fully demonstrates every aspect of choice I discussed before, but sometimes making the wrong choice is a part of the journey, and I feel like few games respect this idea more than Outer Wilds. Before I go any further, let me say this. Outer Wilds is a narrative-driven puzzle exploration game where the solutions are deeply connected to the story and to the world design. So, the more I talk about this game, the more I take away from someone who has not played it. So if you have not played it, let me give you the quick pitch and you can decide on how to continue with this video. In Outer Wilds, you play as an alien astronaut on his first day of being able to explore the solar system. It is a first-person 3D physics-based puzzle game, so the way you explore the system is by loading up in your spaceship and actively flying to the planet and seeing what you can find. The last catch is that after 22 minutes, your expedition is brought to an abrupt end by the sun blowing up and consuming the system in its destruction. But instead of facing oblivion, you awaken to find that you're in a time loop, free to explore the universe again and again and again, to answer the questions that surround your unique situation. If that sounds interesting to you, please stop the video and give it a try. It's a fantastically constructed world that I highly recommend. If that does not sound interesting, or if you're already a seasoned cadet of the Outer Wilds, keep watching. I'll go on now with anything on the table moving forward. Warning over. When you start Outer Wilds, you know very little, but what is given to you is a general push to explore. So from when you first enter your spaceship, you're given a simple choice. Where do you start? Do you fly to the giant ocean planet that flings its islands into space? Maybe you start by exploring the ominous tangle of thorns and fog. Or perhaps that's all too much, and starting with a better understanding of your homeworld makes the most sense. The most fascinating thing is that all of these answers are viable. What you are likely to find wherever you go are the written or recorded logs of either your fellow Hearthians or absent Nomai who once populated the system many, many years ago. These logs will discuss the immediate surroundings, but also how those surroundings relate to the other planets and what was being carried out over there, incentivizing you to visit that location in the future to gain a better understanding. But you're never forced into doing that. You're always able to choose how to spend your time. After a couple loops, however, you start to realize that the universe is in flux from the start to the end of the loop. An example is found on the paired planets of the Hourglass Twins, where one planet contains a massive desert that is slowly leaking to its partner planet, in time revealing the secrets it holds underneath its dunes, while simultaneously swallowing what there is to find on the other. This is where the weight of your choices becomes fully apparent. You start to ask yourself, how do I spend this loop? Do I continue the excavation of the planet I died in last loop, or do I start a new train of inquiry with a crumbling black hole planet? It all feels so organic as well due to two huge factors: the nature of the loop and your toolset. Since you are in a time loop, you are naturally going to be set into the same start point from where your choices begin, and in doing this, the game really emphasizes just how in control of your expedition you truly are, because you know all too well the weight that your choices carry, as you've already made them in a previous loop. It's not like in other games where your choices lock you into a route where you have to accept the benefits and the cost of your decision, but a game where if you fail, you'll learn that the steps you took to get to that failure are not steps to take again, and that you will need to test and experiment with the world to get the desired outcome, much like the Nomai did before you. You become a scientist of this reality, where you observe the natural laws and events that occur, and then are able to piece together a new way forward. The other thing that heightens all of this is the toolset you're given. What makes this toolset so impressive is that you have it all from the first loop. You don't gain new skills or equipment, save for some frequency that you can turn into on your radio system, only knowledge of how the world works, and at some point, it finally hits you. If you had only had the information from the beginning, you could have reached anywhere in this game from the very first loop. Everything was always there, following the same rules as it does on any loop. The only true obstacle that was in your way was the lack of your own understanding of the universe around you. And when this realization finally sinks in, the true crushing yet uplifting weight of every choice you made is apparent. It is the choices that you made that led you to understand, to fully comprehend how the Nomai got to the system, how they were wiped away, how the loop is happening, how you can stop it, how the universe works. This game doesn't tell you to do this. There is no quest line on the upper left of your screen giving you a description of your mission with a waypoint leading you. There's only what you put in, what you invest in the search for what is out there in the wilds of the universe. Perhaps I stand here alone thinking that this game is the pinnacle of how amazing choices in games can be, but I will never forget ending the loop of Outer Wilds. It's not a prompt you're given. There is no point of no return warning. There is simply you actively pulling the warp core and flying away with it. And then that music starts playing. You know what you're doing is grand and dangerous, and that you are the only one that could have made this choice. Despite it just being a game that a multitude of others have played and have also completed, your journey to this point and where it goes feels so personal, not just because you made every right choice, but because it took so many mistakes, so many lessons to get it right, so many of your own choices. And I think that's part of the reason why I love video games so much. We're allowed to be wrong and to take the wrong path, because we learn from it and grow as a player and sometimes even as a person.